I'll answer the question. You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and a lot of times there will be a lot of misinformation or people characterizing kind of events and making them bigger than they seem. It's always, DC Comics is about to implode, or Marvel Comics, are on their deathbed, or Disney's gonna sell Marvel to Warner, or Warner's gonna sell DC to Disney, and a lot of kind of ridiculous accusations out there. And a lot of times I will bring Perch on the channel. We'll discuss it, and normally we'll kind of quash that. We're like, well, if you look at what's happening, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. But Perch, I'm going to be honest with you. There are a lot of things happening right now with DC and Marvel. With DC, you can kind of see the direction that they're going, that they're evolving their product. They're kind of evolving their business to the new market that's occurring right now. But then when we look over at Marvel, I am absolutely flummoxed. And I'm glad you're here with me today to talk about this and kind of add some clarity, because I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, there's definitely some signs out there with Marvel. And I think that this is one of those cases that if the pandemic was not going on, if there hadn't been so much news around the allegations that have taken place and DC changing out from Diamond and everything else, I think a lot more people would be picking up on the fact that there are some signs that things are going on with Marvel, and it's worth tracking.
We're going to get into that here in a second, but I do want to say, if this is your first time visiting the channel, or you've been visiting the product but you haven't subscribed yet, come on, take the leap of faith, subscribe to the channel. You're going to want to see all this content. Definitely, if you enjoy this video, and I think you will, because this is going to be a very good discussion, give us a thumbs up. If you think we're a couple of rubes, give us some thumbs down and let us know why in the comment section below. Also, you will have an opportunity in the video description to subscribe to Perch's channel, and also at the end of the video as well. Now, Perch, the big thing I think that everyone's seeing right now is the mass cancellations. Obviously, we've lost Ghost Rider, Doctor Strange, Surgeon Supreme, which always seemed kind of stupid in my opinion, and Black Cat. And there's been some other titles, but just looking at those three, we have one character that is very important to the MCU. And then we have two other books in Ghost Rider and Black Cat that, if you look at Marvel's sales, are actually kind of good performers. But we're not seeing, it all kind of came out of nowhere.
No, it did. And I think so. I think what we're about to talk about is we talk about all the different signs you're seeing. I think, you, the listener right now, can draw some of your own conclusions. There's plenty of stuff to kind of predict and assess here. We're trying to get to like the most clear possible view. And so you add all these signs up. I mean, a couple of them in isolation maybe mean nothing, but when you put them all together, it makes you wonder. So with these cancellations, like you said, there are some more core titles in there. There are some things that are more relevant. Now, granted, this is Marvel, and they can be relaunched next month with a new #1 and everything else. But the way they were canceled also is somewhat part of a trend of what Marvel does. But in this case, we're getting no direct word at all from the publisher. It's all coming from the creators. They're having to go onto Twitter. They're announcing the cancellations. We knew that it was happening. I mean, they're printing.
Wasn't Amazing Mary Jane in there as well? And that one was kind of performing well as well.
Amazing Mary Jane was in there. The Agents of Wakanda book, which was not performing that well, it was in there. And there's more to come. Apparently in November we're going to get another 6 to 8, is what I've heard. And some of those titles will surprise you. They're things that we're doing kind of mid-range for them. We also know that we are heading up on some closures or some endings. I mean, the Incredible Hulk will get relaunched, but Al Ewing's run is coming to a close at some point in the near future. We have a few others in that camp. So that's one sign, is that they're canceling things that they don't normally cancel. And they haven't been replaced yet with new books. There's a bunch of things that just haven't landed on the map yet, or had a really extended delay, like Savage Avengers, which still is awaiting coming out. We're seeing a change to what Marvel publishes every month. We're seeing them kind of bunch up with some events, and it's just their normal monthly regular title cadence is shifting. It's shifting definitely away into event storylines.
Well, what we're also seeing is, as far as the leadership, and I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, CB Cebulski's normally out front, leading the charge, and he's like the face of the company. That's not who he is. He's normally tweeting about, finding his favorite sushi place in New York. But from time to time, he would talk about comic books on social media. He's almost gone radio silent. I think he's had 1 or 2 tweets regarding comics at Marvel since the pandemic happened. It almost feels like there's a change in leadership, or the leadership is wishy-washy. I remember at one point they announced like all these titles were going to end up, a bunch of them were miniseries. There was a couple of ongoings, and they were just going to end on digital. And then like 3 weeks later, no, they're actually going to end on physical. And now we're seeing all these cancellations and everything. Like, is CB Cebulski still in charge of Marvel? I'm not convinced that he is.
Well, I mean, I'm not convinced he was ever in charge of it in the way people thought anyway. I mean, I think he was in some cases meant to be a spokesman, and, talent relations kind of meant to be a middle manager to put it that way. But no, you're right. So that's another piece. He's silent. We're seeing a lot of other people, Joe Q is more silent. And I want to take people back for a second. I think we talked about it when it happened. Back in October of last year, Kevin Feige was basically put in charge of Marvel Comics. It fell under him to manage. And
Chief Creative Officer.
That's right. And at the time, many people speculated this was going to lead to some people retiring or moving out, Joe Q being one of them. And it was absolutely going to happen. That's what people believed. And I think that there were signs that it was gearing up to do just that there was going to be some management changes kind of once, the new year started and you rolled into February or March. The thing is, the world interrupted all that. The business shut down. Everything got put on pause, and we took a big step back. Everything froze. I think that we're getting back to that moment. And my belief still is that Feige is going to want to have a different group installed there who's loyal to him and is moving this comic business the way he and Disney would like it moved. And I can tell you that there's a lot of people within Marvel who have their resumes polished up, who are concerned, who do believe that layoffs are coming, unrelated to the pandemic, but very much related to how this new regime is going to operate.
It's interesting that you bring Kevin Feige up, because I remember when this happened, and you and I talk behind the scenes a lot, and there are times that I'll hear rumors and we'll discuss it, or you'll hear rumors and we'll discuss it, but there isn't enough amplifying data, or if you go and look at the things surrounding it that are being reported, they don't line up with the information that we're being told, and we just can't talk about it on YouTube. I guess we could if we wanted to be known for gossip mongering, but not delivering good factual information or being able to back it up. One of the things that we were hearing about Kevin Feige, I know this is what you were hearing, you shared it with me, Marvel Comics were going to change how they did business. They were going to kind of pare down the line and put all of their emphasis on the big characters that they have that can translate over to movies and other forms of entertainment. Stop making, your Strike Force, stop making Devil Dinosaur, maybe move those over to more like graphic novels and stuff for a more appropriate market, and stop making comic books for an audience that just don't sell well unless they think that character could translate to the big screen or they have future plans for them. It feels like maybe that's happening.
No, I think that we heard a lot about that. I heard a lot about that. Those discussions were, I want to say open discussions, but it's always true in comics that they go back and forth between, stick to the core, stick to the basics, and expand. And at least whether you could tie it to Feige or just kind of the business exhaustion in general, it felt like Marvel was moving into a, core business and kind of break off these auxiliary pieces. Since that time, what I've also heard, and I think, you see signs of it in how Marvel is reaching out to other licensing partners and other groups. They definitely still have an interest in building up this new market, getting new readership, and maybe aligning titles there that way. But rather than chase them in the direct market, rather than chase them in comic shops, they want to chase them in Scholastic or in Walmart and Target, or places where, if they're going to try and make a title like Moon Girl land with that audience, then they need to go to where that audience is. And I've been talking about this for a long time, that would be smart. And it does feel like Disney is and Marvel are going to make that change. And I think we're seeing that transform in the line right now. I think we're looking at a Marvel lineup that's going to be slimmer. I think it's going to be more, movie, big screen, character that they want to promote driven, probably more event driven, because that actually makes sense in a movie world, that you're doing things more event based and less monthly based. And I think you see a lot of these other efforts kind of go to the markets where they belong, go to places where they think they can actually reach these people. But in doing that, it means a major reformatting of their business. It means a lot of people in that kind of middle management, that editorial team that Marvel has, either are not needed anymore because you move those properties somewhere else, or they're just, they have to radically change how they do business. And I think with what you've also seen with what Hickman has done with X-Men and kind of how that line has been, curated, I think there's a definite desire to have the same thing going with Spider-Man, same thing going with Avengers. And I think even Tom Brevoort, when he did his fantasy editorial, he almost tipped his hand a little bit because he described the world in a, X-Men line, Avengers line, Spider-Man line, and everything else. And that's how he was categorizing his business. And that's kind of one of the first times we've heard Marvel describe it that way in those terms. And I think it's another side. You take all these pieces together, and I do believe we're in the midst of seeing this business change. And potentially, put it this way, for people who are listening, it's this may or may not, please don't get the impression that this means that all the bad people that you hate are going to be fired and good people are going to come in and it'll be hooray for classic comics. It's not like that. This is a change that you may or may not like. In fact, if you dislike Marvel now, you probably won't like the new Marvel either if they change in all these ways. But it is inevitable. It is a change that I think we see us moving to.
One of the large complaints that you and I and other people around the industry have had about Marvel is the flood the shelf strategy. Basically, they brought in a lot of talent, like D-list talent. We're talking about artistic talent that really shouldn't be associated with Marvel. We're talking about writers that shouldn't be associated with Marvel. And they just was sitting there kind of devaluing the characters in the brand with just really bad, mediocre to just terrible stories. Do you think those people will be diverted over to these new markets, or they're just going to cut the fat and they're going to bring in people that know how to cater to those markets, correct?
Yeah, I think more the second one. I think that some of the people who come in may not be good at their jobs either. But I definitely think there's an attitude, and this is true of Disney culture in general. I mean, things will go for a while, but ultimately Disney likes to succeed in the market it's in, and if it feels it's not, it will make changes in personnel to give it a shot, and it will pump money into it and other things. So Disney doesn't have a lot of money to pump into these kinds of efforts right now, but they do have the ability to change resources and change people who are targeting this. And I think as you see them kind of specify which markets are going after, I think that they absolutely we're going to see some new faces there. Now, I mean, because people will ask, because I see it all the time in the comments, from all accounts, Disney and Feige and others are very happy with Sana Amanat. They feel like she's a good ambassador to comics and licensing and everything else. They do like her as a resource, and I think she fits the Disney DNA quite well. So nobody should get the idea that, hey, Sana Amanat and all of those people are going to get fired. I don't think that's going to happen at all. But what I do think is lower paid editors, the middle staff, a lot of those people who just do not have winning books attached to themselves are going to go. I think they will be sent somewhere else. And I think at the upper management level, people at the Joe Q level, Tom Brevoort level, CB Cebulski level, they've got to find a way to add value. And if they can't, I mean, there's just, if they're not adding compelling value to the company right now, I think they are also going to go.
So you think the middle management, even the upper management of Marvel Comics that have been kind of resting on their laurels, basically riding, the easy train with these characters that are beloved and worldwide known, but not adding nothing really of value to much of what's at Marvel Comics outside of a few key creators. The chickens are going to kind of come home to roost, and it's time for them to move on. Do you think this has anything to do with the pandemic and all the massive amount of losses that Disney is experiencing right now, or do you think this was in the works and now it's time to deal with it?
I think it was in the works, and I think it will be deeper now because of the pandemic. I think that I think that it was delayed because there was bigger problems. Feige was trying to figure out how to get his movie slate up and going, and what that meant to the number, and just in general, he was focusing on where the money was, which makes sense. That's what you'd expect him. I think that. I think that a lot of this stuff was inevitable. I think that when Feige came in, I mean, Feige had a adversarial relationship with several of the Marvel creators dating back to kind of the start of the MCU when Brian Michael Bendis and Joe and Quesada and a few others kind of were giving him script advice, and that relationship was not a happy one. So I think the second Feige came on, a lot of people suspected, and there are a lot of rumors to the fact that Joe Q's days were numbered, and I think that plays out. Beyond that, I think if you're not part of this new business plan, if you can't show you how you add value and you compel business in this new way, I think the company will not have a use for you, and they will move you aside. So I think we're going to see some pretty major changes. This is my speculation. I want to clear on that, but you hear enough rumors, you hear enough people talk, and anyone who tells you otherwise is lying. I mean, at Marvel right now, there's a definite sense of concern among the editors and among the staff jobs that big cuts are coming. I've heard it from a dozen people. A couple of days ago, I posted just something up on Twitter, just speculating. Hey, I wonder how many comics you could get for $120,000. I wonder how many comics you could produce. The response I got was eye-opening a little bit. I got a lot of people from Marvel, currently employed at Marvel, sending me DMs saying, "Are you hiring? Do you have money?" It was weird, I will tell you, and so that indicates to me that there is a lot of concern within the company. I think the signs are all there that change is coming, and I think it is trouble for the comic. And now, what comes out the other end? Maybe it'll be better. We'll see.
You said Disney likes to make money. They kind of like to win in the markets that they're at. When they make these changes under Kevin Feige to a more slimmed down, more core-based Marvel Comics universe that's kind of there to feed the MCU, if they aren't able to turn it around and actually produce good comics that are going to translate to the big screen, or produce comics that can create enthusiasm, or maybe develop new characters and things like that they can play with, do you see a point where Disney just says, you know what? We can make graphic novels and we can make kids novels. Maybe now's not the time to make periodic weekly comics anymore.
I think they will ask that question. I think they're always going to be asking that question to themselves. I think that Disney understands marketing usually fairly well, and I think they view this as a marketing vehicle. And if they feel like there's a connection that they can make, and it's beneficial to the overall business to keep these properties alive and put it in, they will do it. They will not keep this business alive just for happy feelings and legacy. They will keep it alive because there's a purpose for them. And if that purpose goes away, they will change it. I think that it's within the realm of possibility that Disney says, hey, we're going to change our comic business to a curated line where you have some people in-house who are managing these properties. So they're getting published and printed outside. We've talked about them moving more licensing in the past. Wouldn't be surprised. But if they do go down that road, I think they've got Disney Publishing. They've got different arms to go to. It's not like they're going to immediately turn to a IDW or Boom and say, you take the Marvel business now. It wouldn't work that way. It would work like the rest of their business, where they line up properties. Maybe they get involved in the creators, but more they accept bids from other publishers to do these projects on a one-off basis. But that would be a radical change to how they produce comics if it comes to it. But I think all these things definitely should be looked at. Marvel is changing. Like I said, if there was not all this other stuff going on, I think a lot more people would be seeing the writing on the wall that there are some major shifts that are happening right now in the background.
I don't know about you, Perch, but if somebody from Marvel, like a creator or an editor there, just DM me, like, do you have any advice? I would say stop worrying about fans, whether or not you like them or not. Start worrying about the characters and the stories that you're a part of, and make sure that you're a value add to the company. Because there are very few people I can name off the top of my head that have been a value add to Marvel Comics and the legacy of Marvel Comics the past few years. And I think they put themselves all in jeopardy by not trying harder to reach out to the fans, by not trying harder to create stories catered to their audience. And they've been so combative for so long that I don't know that a lot of them can change at this point.
And that's why I think the upper management change, I think, is definitely necessary. I think there is there's a style, there's a belief, and there's too much history. And the same thing goes. I mean, in many cases, bridges have been burnt to the extent that fans, even if people change, fans aren't going to welcome them back with open arms in some cases. So Marvel used to pride itself, I think, as having kind of Marvel zombies, really loyal fans, people that would stick with them through thick and thin, no matter what. and that's just not that's not the company anymore. They do not have that relationship with the fans that they used to have. They have some people certainly that are loyal fans, but not anywhere close to how it was 10, 20 years ago. And to repair and rebuild that is going to be tricky. What's interesting is that Disney as a company prides themselves heavily on that attitude, that belief. People who are Disney loyalists for life, and I think that that's part of the cultural DNA that always fit well with Marvel and Disney. And the fact that it seems to now be certainly diminished from where it was, I think that's just another factor in this.
Interesting days ahead for certain. We've been kind of talking about this. I'm glad we finally got to have a full discussion, kind of put it out there on the YouTube channel, get people talking about it. Obviously, you will be on the channel tomorrow. We're going to talk about it on Comics Aficionados. I'm trying to get Clownfish in. I think Jervain Dargan said he's going to join us, and we're going to kind of talk about all the issues we talked about right here, but kind of expanded it out a little bit more to even discuss all the financial issues at Disney right now. We know they just lost $5 billion in one quarter. I believe they brought on over $12 billion in new debt acquirings or access to new debt and things like that. They are not in a great place financially. And the comic book industry is a niche industry, and it certainly feels like it's far more at risk today than it was just 6 months ago.
I would agree completely.